On the day that Ange Postecoglou finally put his foot down and suspended one of Tottenham's most naive but talented players, reports have suggested that Spurs are interested in Bilbao's Nico Williams, but that a deal has always seemed unrealistic. Meanwhile, Christian Eriksen looks set to move to another Premier League club from Old Trafford, and Bournemouth have smashed their transfer record for a Dominic Solanke replacement. All this and more on today's daily Premier League transfer news, including this afternoon's Ange Postecoglou pre-match Leicester City press conference. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening as ever. Please do press that like button. Please do press subscribe if you haven't already. Trying to grow the channel. Really appreciate all of your support. And if you already are a subscriber, please let any friends and family who you think like Spurs or daily Premier League transfer news or any transfer news from further afield. And you can become a member, only £1 a month. All the details in the description box below. And it really helps me make this daily content for you. But let's get started. And as I mentioned, Yves Bissouma has today been suspended by Ange Postecoglou and Tottenham Hotspur Football Club for Monday night's opening Premier League game of the season against Leicester. And that is after he posted on his own Snapchat account at the weekend himself inhaling laughing gas. Ange Postecoglou said the following when asked about it in today's press conference. He said, "There's some trust building to do between Biss and me and Biss and the group. The door is open for him and we can help him realise the decisions he makes impact the group." He was asked how Bissouma can regain his trust. He said, "Behaviour, mate. It's that simple. It's about making better decisions. He was very apologetic to me, to the club and everyone involved, but that is just part of it." Guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this Yves Bissouma and the laughing gas incident. For me, he's a role model. He's a role model for the club. He's a role model to young supporters of Tottenham Hotspur. He's a brilliant player, but he is naive. He keeps making bad decisions both on and off the pitch, and he will never fulfill his potential unless he realises how important it is to just knuckle down and make football his absolute priority. But like I said, you may think differently, so let me know in the comments. Ange Postecoglou did a very long press conference pre the Leicester game today. I'm going to bring you some of those quotes now. He was asked initially about the Leicester game on Monday. He said the following: "I saw a fair bit of them. Enzo did a fantastic job with them last season. I kind of knew he would get them playing a fairly attractive kind of football, and you always look at those kinds of teams. I knew that they'd bounce straight back up. They're a strong team who have obviously had a change of manager. Coops is in and he is a good guy. I've got to know him over the last couple of years. He's a top manager and it's always difficult when you lose your job, but I think he will do well with Leicester. He knows what the Premier League is all about. When you play a promoted side on the opening day of the season at their place, it isn't going to be an easy game. Their crowd will be up for it, and there will be plenty of excitement for them being back in the Premier League. It's going to be a tough test for us, but at the same time, over the last year, we've known how important it is to get off to a good start in the Premier League, and that's what we'll try to do." I think Ange's saying all the right things there personally. I have to say, actually drawing a promoted team away on the first day of the season, other than maybe drawing like a Man City or a Liverpool or an Arsenal away from home, it's probably one of the hardest tests you're going to get because they're going to be the most up for it. Their confidence is going to be at their highest, and the fans, especially Leicester. Don't forget, Leicester, what is it, like 5-6 years ago, won the Premier League. Like, their kind of journey up and down has been incredible, and the fans will just be so ecstatic to be back in the Premier League. They'll have those ridiculous clapping fan things, I'm sure every single supporter will, and they'll make a bit of a din. And I have to say, without Yves Bissouma, it is going to be harder for Spurs to play through the middle of the park against Leicester. And it will be interesting to see who replaces him in that midfield. I'll go on to talk a bit about that later in the show. Ange was also asked about the team news. He said, "Knock on wood, at the moment, everyone is training. Obviously, players like Rishi and Fraser Forster that is, are the last two into the training group. So they've had a good week of training, but no game time. They're training, which is the main thing though, and everyone seems to be in good condition." So I think for me, realistically, Richarlison maybe a place on the bench at the most, but if he's only had 1 week of training, maybe it'll be Will Lancashire who is the striker on the bench, and Solanke has to go straight in. Very exciting for him. Debut for Tottenham Hotspur, starting in the number 9 position, playing for a team who make loads of chances from out wide, getting in behind, getting crosses across the box. And I do think I don't think Leicester will try and sit behind the ball at all. I'd be very surprised if they do. I think they'll come at us. I think the crowd will draw them on. And I think there will be spaces for the likes of Brennan Johnson and Son Heung-min to get in round the back, cut the ball back, and there should be chances for Dominic Solanke on his debut. So for any of you guys who play fantasy Premier League or like gambling, I wouldn't be afraid to put a little bet on Solanke scoring a goal because, let's face it, Spurs will score, but they're likely to concede as well. So if you like a gamble, go on the old both teams to score. Ange Postecoglou was asked in his press conference whether Archie Gray, our brand new 18-year-old £45 million signing from Leeds United, will be a contender to replace Yves Bissouma in that 6 role. He said the following: Archie has settled in really well. Great kid, but a really, really strong mindset. We've asked him to play different positions, but he's handled it really well. Part of the attraction of bringing someone like Archie to the club, and it is the case for a number of players we brought in, is he can play more than one position. So when it's required, we can use him in those areas. He's going really well. I'm really happy with him, and he has every chance to play on Monday. Now, let me know what you think in the comments. Who's going to replace Bissouma? But personally, I think it's a shoo-in that the midfield will be Rodrigo Bentancur, Pat Matar and James Maddison. I think Postecoglou will think, big game, away from home, lots of pressure, first game of the season, you want to get off to a good start and you want experienced players in there, players who've been there and done it. And in terms of Maddison and Bentancur, that is them. Pat Matar obviously played a lot last season, but still a young boy. But we need his legs in the engine room. And I said in pre-season a lot about Pat Matar. I think he's more suited to the hustle and bustle of the Premier League than maybe the more kind of training game tempo of pre-season games. So I think it'll be that, but I don't think Bergvall and Gray will be far behind, and I would not be surprised if on 60 minutes or just after, Bergvall and or Gray will come on in that midfield. In fact, Ange Postecoglou was asked about Rodrigo Bentancur. He said this: yeah, Rodri last year was very much a bit like our season. It was very much stop-start at times. At times he looked really good, got some rhythm, and then something would happen, whether it was an injury or another disruption. For him and the other guys, he went away with Uruguay and got game time there. In terms of his mindset, he takes a bit of time, and it's been great to have him back as part of the group. He said in terms of his mindset, he's in a much better place of knowing that from an injury perspective, he is free of that. He then went on to say, he came on in the second half last week, and I thought he looked really good, has looked good in training. So hopefully that is where some of our improvement comes from. Guys who last year, for one reason or another, couldn't get to the levels we know they can. And if we can do that with guys like him and the ones who had good seasons last year, if we can improve them as well, that improvement I'm looking for will be there. I think that shows that Ange Postecoglou thinks Rodrigo Bentancur is a top player for Spurs, and if we can get him properly fit like he was before his ACL injury that he suffered a couple of seasons ago, if we can get him back right up there, he is a brilliant player to play in that 6. He loves getting the ball off the back 4, taking it on the half turn and beating that first presser. You know, all the teams who we come up against this season are going to press us incredibly high because they know how dangerous and how quickly they can score a goal if they nick the ball off us that high up the park. But Bentancur loves scanning, looking around him, taking the ball on the half turn, beating the first player, and then the entire midfield opens up and Spurs will be in. So that's why I think Bentancur will be the first name on the list now that Yves Bissouma has been suspended for that game. Big Ange was also asked about Dominic Solanke and how he's fitted into training this week. He said this: thankfully, it's what we expected. He's a top pro and he's settled into the dressing room really well. Football-wise, you can see how he's going to fit in. So far, he's fitted in really well with the group in training. Doesn't surprise me at all. I think that's why you buy players who've played in the Premier League, who've scored goals in the Premier League, who've had lots of Premier League experience. They're just going to fit in straight away. They're not going to worry about the tempo of the training sessions. Sure, do I think that Dominic Solanke will have noticed, an upward speed about Tottenham's training sessions compared to Bournemouth? Of course, but he's been in the first team squads at Liverpool and Chelsea, so he's been there and done that before, and he's an England international, of course, as well. So I think that's why we've gone big on Solanke rather than going for, say, a Gyökeres who's never played Premier League football. I know he's played in the Championship, but I do think this is a less risky signing, and I love how positive Postecoglou is about him. I think he just thinks he's got the right mindset, the right attitude, and he's at the right place in his career. And he's also had some ups and downs in his career as well. And from the downs, he will appreciate the ups. And that is kind of mirroring Postecoglou's own journey to the Premier League. So I think that's why Solanke will prove to be a good signing. Ange was also then asked about Richarlison. As I mentioned, He's had 1 week of training, of course, but he was asked more about him, I think, in general. He said, yeah, Rishi is good. Obviously, he hasn't played at all, so that's the match minutes. We're going to have to try to get that into him over the next few weeks, but he's trained fully. He doesn't feel any effects of the injury, which is really positive for us. As I said, everyone else is in a really good place. Obviously, a few of the guys came in later last week, but even those guys, I think it's probably benefiting us playing on Monday to still have another couple of sessions. We had a really sort of strong session today for a Thursday. If we were playing Saturday, nowhere near as strong as we did. So we could put some little meaningful work into the guys today. So I think having the Monday game helps us so that most of our guys should be in decent shape on Monday evening. So, yeah, very exciting, isn't it? The Premier League, of course, starts tomorrow night. Manchester United at home to Fulham. Again, for those of you into betting, it would not surprise me a bit if Fulham got a result there. I like what Marco Silva does for them. And Man United, they've made some signings, but again, big pressure on at Old Trafford. And if they don't get an early goal and get the crowd up, it could get a little bit bitty. Very exciting to have the Premier League back. Ange Postecoglou was also asked in his press conference about targets for the new season. He said the following: I go into every season with the same kind of target of trying to be successful. The starting point for us is improvement. Improvement in our football, improvement in the consistency of our football. As you said, we had a decent season last year. We certainly improved on the season last year in terms of results alone. Obviously, we changed the football and we had some really good moments and some moments where we had to work really hard to get some results. And probably for us, if we can get improvement in that, then more consistency gives us an opportunity and a platform to try to achieve something, which is what you go into every season trying to do. Spurs fans, let me know in the comments. Realistically, where do you think Tottenham will finish at the end of this season? Let me know. I'm going to put my neck out there now. I agree with everything Ange says. I think we can improve. I think we've got players who fit his style of football and the way he wants to play far more across the squad now. We've got rid of a lot of players who didn't fit it, who Ange kind of had to play because they were in and around the squad. But now that they've gone, it's either the likes of Bergvall and Gray and Solanke, or then you're looking at, before they potentially go out on loan anyway, you're looking at Mikey Moore, you're looking at Jamie Donnelly, you're looking at Will Lancashire. So it's either those players who he's brought in, or it's the youth players, rather than the likes of Højbjerg, rather than the likes of Royal. And I think that's exciting because they all have the attributes. And if they didn't, then they would be going out the door. Ange Postecoglou. Oh, I said I was going to predict, didn't I? I think Tottenham are going to come. I think Tottenham are going to come third this season. That's why I think Tottenham are going to come. And you can call me on it at the end of the season if I'm wrong. All being well, no injuries, no big injuries, no big suspensions, no big problems. I think we might come third, but let me know in the comments what you think. Ange was also asked about his Europa League squad. He was a little bit impish about it. He said, I think you spend far more time trying to work that out, mate, than I do. I think we'll be fine. We'll have enough players to play. With those things, if you get caught up in numbers, well, the idea is to have a strong enough squad to compete in everything we want to. You do have to balance it off, but with the squad we have at the moment and balance of what we're trying to do, I still feel we're in a good place to be able to field a strong team and abide by the guidelines. So I think what Ange is saying there, let's not think about the Europa League until it comes, really. I know we have a little bit of an issue with homegrown players and club-trained players, and I'm sure Johan Lang and the recruitment team will be thinking about that far more than Ange Postecoglou. He's right. He's got more important stuff on his chest, frankly, and he's dealing with that, and rightly so. And the most important thing, of course, is Leicester on Monday night. As I discussed in yesterday's video, and thank you all for watching that, loads of views and comments yesterday, really appreciate it. I announced, obviously, for the first time on my channel, that the Emerson Royal saga had finally ended, and he has signed for AC Milan. Ange Postecoglou was asked about that. He said, yeah, Emmy, super guy, great pro again. It's one of those decisions you have to make when you're trying to change squads. Really popular amongst the group, and not just because he's a great guy. He didn't play a lot last year in his preferred position, but you wouldn't know it the way he trained every day. He's the hardest worker at training and a really top guy. He's a guy you would want to spend time with. A big heart, loved by all, and I think it is a fantastic move for him. He'll love Milan. It's a big club he's gone to, and it's one of those things that happens in football where it is not really an aspersion on him that he is not part of this. It is just that other things aligned. I think it is a win for him, and it allows us to continue rebuilding the squad in the way we want. I mean, I don't know about you, but I couldn't love Ange Postecoglou anymore. What he's basically saying there, right, reading between the lines, is he just didn't fit the style of football that I want to play. But I played him when I could last season, when I needed players in there, because he trained so hard, he worked so hard. And I've said it before about Emerson Royal and others who could use him as an excellent role model. If we had players with the commitment of Emerson Royal across the squad, we'd be absolutely fine. Now, all I'm saying is he didn't have the attributes. I agree with Ange. He didn't have the attributes to fit the style. But if you have that level of commitment and desire like Royal, and hopefully lots of those young players have really seen that, because it was clear to Emerson Royal from day one of Ange Postecoglou he wasn't really his style of player. Probably the same with Conte. Emerson Royal came in under Nuno, obviously. And, he's a good defensive right back, but he's not good going forward. And we need players, especially in the fullbacks, who are going to play in that 8 and 10 inverted position. It's a wild position for a fullback. Suits Pedro Porro, it suits Destiny Udogie, and I think it'll suit Archie Gray as well. But it doesn't suit Emerson Royal very well, and a little bit less so. It doesn't really suit Ben Davies that well either. So it'll be interesting to see if we get in another left-sider before the end of the transfer window. But just as Ange Postecoglou said, I agree. Emerson Royal, great guy, good luck, good move for him to Milan. And I hope that in Serie A, where defenders are just basically told to defend in the most part, I think he'll do well. Ange Postecoglou was asked about, in the press conference, about Dominic Solanke and does he expect any more major signings? And Ange said the following: yeah, I said last week I don't like speculating around this stuff, but Dom was important because even though it was settled, it was a tricky pre-season for us because we had the majority of our back four missing and we didn't have a striker because Rishi was injured as well. We only had young Will, as in Will Lancashire. So when you don't have those key elements and you're trying to build a team, well, I thought we managed that really well, but I was super pleased to obviously get Dom in, and that's coincided with Rishi coming back. So from that perspective, it does give us a little bit more of a settled look of what the team is going to look like moving forward. But as I said, there are still, at least 2 press conferences before the window shuts, mate. That's how I count them, by the way. So a little bit of funny from Ange at the end there. That's how he counts how many weeks there are left till the transfer window ends. So I think what he's suggesting there is, don't imagine that it's the end of the window for Spurs. You've got to think there's a possibility of Gio Lo Celso leaving. Maybe Ben Davies. Maybe a couple of others. So I don't know if they manage to get rid of a few more players off the wage bill like that. And there is talk about the likes of Donnelly and Lancashire maybe going on loan as well. Then maybe they'll have room to get another player in. I certainly would love one more marquee player, and I haven't totally lost faith that Eberechi Eze could maybe come to Spurs, although as I'll speak about later on in the episode, Man City are now definitely going to go into the market, which is a worry because obviously no one can compete with that. Ange was asked a little bit more about the last few weeks of the window, and he said, look, I think while it's open, there's always kind of a little bit of uncertainty because there are so many moving parts to it. It's not just outgoings and incomings, as opposed to last year where there is a lot more moving parts. You're working within a smaller spectrum of uncertainty, certainly for me anyway, that I can plan for the season knowing that the bulk of the work has been done. Whatever we get from here on in it is not going to disrupt us too much, both incoming and outgoing. So from that perspective, I think I said after the weekend, I still expect there will be activity, but I think the uncertainty factor is a lot less than last year, to which I'm pretty sure he's talking about Harry Kane really, isn't he? Because it was exactly at this time, pretty much this Friday, a year ago, that Harry Kane left us for Bayern Munich, and it was just the Friday before our opening game of the season. Some more general stuff. Ange was asked about his what he learnt from the first year at the club. He said, I didn't really sort of look at it that way. The biggest thing for us is that we laid a decent platform and foundation for the team we want to be. I was disappointed after last season, but it wasn't just the results the club wanted to change. They wanted to change the way the club plays its football. I think we endeavour to do that. We kind of changed the course of the way we play, and that's given us a platform to improve on that. If we improve on what we have done last year, it gives us a chance to have some success. And that's what I say to anybody who is complaining about the fact we came 5th or we didn't beat Aston Villa to the top 4, or the fact that we concede lots of goals. We are changing the ethos of the club, both on the pitch and off the pitch. To dare is to do, getting the players thinking that way, forward thinking, attacking, progressive, and showing the kind of players around the world as well who we're interested in that is the club we now are. It's a positive. It's going to take time. Be patient. But if we can get another start like we did last season, 8 wins, 2 draws, it doesn't even have to be as good as that. but then not have the injuries and suspensions, we could potentially put together a real challenge. We've got the best manager for us here. I'm so sure of it. Ange was also asked more about last season and this coming season and his demands. He said this: "They are always my players. From the day I took over, they were all my players. It's been a different pre-season, it's fair to say. We feel a lot more settled and better prepared for what's ahead. This time last year, there was still a lot of unknowns for us. Having said all that, it didn't stop us from having a great start to the season. It's one of these things where just because we are more settled and prepared doesn't guarantee anything. We still have to go out there and produce. We had a solid pre-season, and for the most part, everybody sort of contributed to that. We obviously had some guys in late last week and guys who are just coming back from long-term injuries in Destiny and Rishi and Fraser Forster. I think this last 7 days when we've had everyone in, you can see the level of training has gone up again from what it was on pre-season and on tour. That's really created a good environment for us. We still have a couple of sessions to go, but the pleasing thing is pretty much everyone on the list is available, and that's going to be important for us. Pretty much right until the international break, we know the fixtures, but after that, Europe starts. Carabao Cup, we're going to have a lot of games, and we are going to need a strong squad. The next sort of 3 weeks still gives us time to put some work into the guys to get them ready. Now, I think it's really interesting what he said there, isn't it? As soon as the players who came back late came in, the quality of the training came back up. And there we're talking about Christian Romero, Mickey van der Ven, Richarlison coming back from injury. We're talking about Dominic Solanke coming in. And I can just imagine kind of Romero being the absolute firecracker who just plows through challenges and makes that happen, just ups it for everyone, makes people realise how important all of this is. So I think that's really exciting that Ange just said it's been a much better week's training, and I think that will benefit us leading up to the Leicester games. The Premier League have announced that semi-automated offsides will be starting this season, and Ange was asked about that. He said, "We've had meetings with the Premier League and they've come out and spoken about the changes. I welcome those changes. For me, the key thing is the less disruptions to the game we have, the better. That's always been my biggest gripe around VAR. It's been materially changing the game with not a great deal of benefit in terms of decisions, in my opinion, because there's still conjecture around even those decisions. But I think that the changes they're going to make are positive ones. I think the semi-automated will help because it helps speed up the process of those decisions. They're looking for less intrusion from VAR, which again, I'd much rather leave in the hands of the referee most of the time. The majority of the time, apart from exceptional circumstances. So I think with VAR, it's here to stay. And whether I like it or not, the reality of it is it's now an opportunity to improve that process. I think whenever you bring in something new, there's an opportunity to improve. And I embrace that. I need to temper my comments a little bit because I've gone pretty hard on VAR, but I also understand that it's an extension of the officials, and I've always been big on not criticising officials. So I've got to have a think about the kind of way I talk about VAR now because it is an extension of us not abiding by the rules. I'm hoping that the changes are positive because my belief around that was I don't want the game to change. I still want joy around goals, or I want less interruptions, less disruption so that we can love what we love about the game. I love those comments personally. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about VAR? Would you scrap it? I feel like younger people probably wouldn't, but I would scrap it because I just think the joy of celebrating goals isn't as high now because you just have to wait. Any of you who watch me on the We Are Tottenham TV watch along, and if you don't subscribe to them, make sure you do. I can't celebrate goals the way I want to because I'm just so in fear that VAR will change it. So I'm with Ange. I wouldn't change it that much, but if they are tweaking VAR and it makes it better, okay, I don't mind it so much. Finally, in terms of Ange's press conference, he was asked about Harry Winks, who of course will be playing as he had a great season for Leicester in the Championship last season, and he'll no doubt be starting on Monday night. He said the following: "Yes, to be fair to Harry, that decision in terms of him leaving Spurs was kind of made before I got here. It's part of the process of change. As I said last week, it's not about a quality of a footballer because he doesn't fit. There is no point in me coming in and tinkering around the edges. We needed to make significant changes. That's what the club wanted, and that's what I've done. The squad has changed fairly dramatically from 12 or 13 months ago, but that's the reason I came in. At the same time, it doesn't diminish Harry's career. He's had a fantastic season and is back in the Premier League. He's an outstanding footballer. These decisions are not often a reflection of a player's ability. It is just timing of things and things moving on. I agree. I said it yesterday. I think Harry Winks is a great player. He's a good player for Leicester, and it just didn't work towards the last few seasons for him at Spurs. Don't forget, under Pochettino, Poch loved him. Poch loved Oliver Skip as well. He loved those players who made things tick. And I hope Harry plays well on Monday, but not too well. Okay, on to some transfer news now. Tottenham are indeed, according to Matt Law, one of the clubs who have been interested in Bilbao star Nico Williams during this transfer window. But apparently, Ange Postecoglou was understanding of the fact that a move for him was never particularly realistic, and that's because, of course, Barcelona were interested in him as well. According to Matt Law, Tottenham started behind the scenes over that deal for Dominic Solanke back in June. Postecoglou was unequivocally determined to add an out-and-out striker to his squad. Given Tottenham's immediate need for someone to put the ball in the back of the net, Postecoglou told the rest of the club's transfer committee that he wanted somebody with experience of playing in the Premier League who could handle playing at least 40 to 45 games. And by the way, Solanke's injury record has been brilliant over the last 5 or 6 seasons. Hardly missed any games at all. Let's hope that's not putting the jinx on that. But Postecoglou said he wanted that fitness because we have a Europa League campaign on the horizon and somebody who could fit into his tactical plan. It was quickly agreed that Solanke ticked every box. A deal for the Bournemouth striker was far from straightforward, but the eventual completion of it delighted the Spurs manager. That's brilliant. Meanwhile, Arsenal legend Ian Wright was asked about Spurs signing Solanke, and maybe surprisingly, he said the following: "You know what? That wouldn't have bothered me if Arsenal went for Solanke. Solanke could be the signing of the season at £65 million. Well, I love to hear that from not only an Arsenal legend, but also one of the greatest strikers the Premier League has ever had. Ian Wright knew how to score goals, and he moved from Crystal Palace to Arsenal fairly late in his career. I think he was already 28, 29, and he scored buckets of goals for Arsenal. He became their record goal scorer, and he was a real fox in the box and just an absolute scavenger of goals and just a nemesis of most Premier League defenders. And if he says a player is good, it's enough for me. Meanwhile, former Spurs star Teddy Sheringham was also asked about Solanke. He said, "When Tottenham signed Solanke, I was delighted. That's the kind of signing that I think the club needed, and it's something I like to see. He's a player that coming into his prime as a striker. He'll be 27 in September. He just had a brilliant season for Bournemouth where he scored 19 goals and got 3 assists. Solanke has qualities that I like. He's not a big typical centre forward that bullies players with strength. He's cuter than that. I think he'll develop into an even better player under Ange Postecoglou, and you would expect him to score more goals in a Tottenham side that creates plenty of chances than he did at Bournemouth. He played well against Spurs for Bournemouth last season. Ange obviously noted that. I'm excited for the fans because they need someone to finish off a lot of the good football that we played last year, and I'm pleased that we've brought him in before the season starts. Solanke's signing is a massive boost to the club's hopes of challenging for the title this season. That will certainly be the aim. It will be difficult, of course, but he will also massively help with the battle for the Champions League as well. I think for James Maddison, he'll definitely be playing with a point to prove this season after missing out on a place in the England squad. I've no doubt that he'll be looking at a new managerial change at England and thinking that he wants to be part of that future. Of course, to do that, he needs to get back to playing his best for Tottenham. I think he will have a massive amount of hunger to show what he's all about as a player this season. So maybe missing out on the Euros will be a blessing in disguise for him and for Tottenham. I'm looking forward to seeing the response he shows in that opening game against his old club, Leicester. I also want to see what Solanke's arrival does for Maddison's game. They're obviously good mates. They've played together with the England youth teams, and I think that's a key relationship for Tottenham this season. Solanke could be the perfect foil for Maddison. I can see Maddison creating a lot of things for Solanke, and he would have been waiting for the club to sign a top striker to finish off all the cute little balls that he can play. The signing of Solanke is a bit like when the club signed Jurgen Klinsmann to replace me. It was a big one, and I hope that it gives everyone a massive lift at the football club. If Solanke starts finishing all the chances that Maddison can create for him, then all of a sudden everyone is talking about Maddison and England again. I think Teddy Sheringham there is talking about when Klinsmann came the second time round, because the first time Jurgen Klinsmann was signed by Alan Sugar and Ozzy Ardiles, he played incredibly with Teddy Sheringham. They had an amazing partnership. Some more news from Matt Law on potential signings. Anyway, he said that Chelsea never quoted Spurs less than £45 million for Conor Gallagher. That is the money it would have taken to sell him to their rivals, despite agreeing to sell him to Atletico Madrid for just £33 million. So that's a £12 million difference. That is the English club to English club tax. Some news on Mikey Moore. Spurs are set to keep him at the club this season rather than loan him out. Given that he's only just turned 17, their thinking is it makes more sense to keep him close, learning from senior pros and getting minutes here and there. However, according to Dan Kilpatrick, I think in the Standard, he says that Tottenham youngsters Alfie Devine, Ashley Phillips and Jamie Donnelly are expected to head out on loan before the window shuts. I'm hoping that they will be championship loans and English loans, and if not, at a push, maybe the Eredivisie like Troy Parrott did so successfully last season. Manor Solomon, according to Dan Kilpatrick, says that Manor Solomon is also likely to leave Spurs on loan by the end of the window, with Tottenham looking to add another winger to their squad before that shuts. That's where I'm talking about Eze. Could Eze play on the wing? Some other news from Matt Law. He says that Fabio Paratici, remember Don Fabio, he remains close to Daniel Levy, but he has not been present in meetings or played a role in any of the major incomings or outgoings to date in this window, which marks a shift in Spurs' approach to signings. Meanwhile, some other news not transfer related. Those apparently who've seen Lucas Bergvall up close and personal are excited about what the Swede can achieve once he's fit enough to carry out Ange Postecoglou's instructions for full games. So that's why I guess Bergvall is likely to start on the bench, not deemed fit enough to play all game at the moment, but what an exciting talent he is. He's been my favourite player of pre-season so far. Meanwhile, his fellow young signing, apparently the feeling within the Spurs coaching department is that Archie Gray could provide cover at right back if needed, even though his future is in midfield, and that he eventually will develop into a top-class player in central midfield. Matt Law went on to say that Archie Gray wasn't initially viewed as a priority target for Spurs this window, but they quickly accelerated their interest when Brentford closed in on a deal for the Leeds starlet. That makes sense. Tottenham seeing opportunities, taking advantage of them. According to Matt Law, he says Tottenham want to trim their squad further before the end of the window. Further business could be dictated by which players end up actually departing. So like I said earlier, more players could come in if we can get rid of the likes of Lo Celso, for instance. Maybe Ben Davies at a push. Finally, Will Lancashire could also be loaned out, apparently, although because Spurs are short of squad depth with Scarlett and Valise having left, Lancashire may be asked to stick around. Okay, guys, moving on to some still Spurs-related news, but actually not directly related. Mauricio Pochettino, the best manager of ours of modern times, has accepted the job as the American national team manager. Now, for me, I find that a little disappointing because I would have liked him to be the England national team boss heading into the next World Cup. But maybe the FA have gone slowly, or maybe the FA maybe they've got a little potential positive answer from Pep Guardiola that maybe he'd be willing to take over from next summer. Let me know, who do you want to be the next England manager? But Pochettino is going to be the American manager, and Ange Postecoglou in his press conference today was asked how he felt about that. He said the following: "It's a different job. It's a different role, different skill set. International football, when you're together, everything is really intense. The highs are high and the lows are low because every win means you'll get closer to doing something special. So it's a different experience, but I've loved that. I've experienced that. If that happens, and Poch will, the US, they're emerging as a nation, and I think they want to take the next step where they can make an impact at a World Cup. There's definitely talent there, so I'm sure Poch will enjoy it." Okay, so that was a bit of a bumper edition of the Spurs news. I'm going to quickly go through some other Premier League transfer news. Make sure, guys, if you haven't already, press that like button. It really helps this video get seen by other transfers and Spurs-loving fans. And if you're not a subscriber already, please do press that subscribe button. Really appreciate all the support. Okay, starting at Man United, they've made an offer for Fenerbahce's Ferdi Kadioglu. Brighton, though, have also tabled an offer which is worth more when add-ons are taken into consideration. However, Man United have offered the most money in the initial payment, so a bit of a tug-of-war there over Kadioglu from Fenerbahce. Napoli have apparently opened talks with Scott McTominay and Manchester United over the potential signing of him for Antonio Conte. However, McTominay would prefer a loan deal rather than going there permanently. Also, as I mentioned at the top of the show, United are expecting formal bids for now 32-year-old Danish midfielder Christian Eriksen, who only has 1 year left on his deal. I've mentioned before I'd love him to come back to Spurs as kind of a backup option for James Maddison, but that seems unlikely. He doesn't fit the age of the kind of transfer strategy, and I understand that, but maybe it's my heart ruling my head, but I'd love to see him back at the club. Over to Man City. Man City, like I said earlier, they are now going to enter the transfer market, and that is a result of Oscar Bobb's broken leg, in addition to Julian Alvarez's moving to Atletico Madrid. Meanwhile, there's been an outgoing from City. Calvin Phillips has gone to Ipswich Town on loan. Big deal for Ipswich Town and their owner, Ed Sheeran. I know he doesn't own them, but he is on their shirts. Meanwhile, over to Stamford Bridge, Chelsea are back in talks with Napoli over a move for Victor Osimhen. Antonio Conte, who used to manage Chelsea, wants Lukaku and 21-year-old Italian midfielder from Chelsea, Cesare Casadei, as part of the Osimhen transfer. Meanwhile, PSG apparently cooling their interest in Jadon Sancho and apparently considering moving out, pulling out of the race to sign Osimhen. Over to the London Stadium, West Ham are once again in for Tammy Abraham from Roma. They are willing to sell him to West Ham for £25 million. That's according to Gazzetta dello Sport in Italy. Meanwhile, this shows the power of the Premier League. After Spurs bought Dominic Solanke for a move that could reach £65 million, Bournemouth have smashed their transfer record by signing Evan Nilsson from Porto. €47 million with a 10% sell-on clause for Porto. Medical soon to happen. Meanwhile, Brighton have also gone big again. They've agreed to activate the £40 million release clause of Leeds forward Jorginho Rutter. £29 million plus £35 million offers were rejected before they got to that release clause deal. That's according to The Athletic. Big move for Brighton. Meanwhile, Saudi Pro League side Al Qadsiya have offered 28-year-old England international Ivan Toney an annual salary of £15.4 million and a 3-year deal to get him over to Saudi Arabia from Brentford. And over in Italy, AC Milan have closing in on the Yusuf Fofana deal. And I say that because all the reports have said that Yusuf Fofana has turned down numerous Premier League clubs to go to AC Milan, one of which was Tottenham Hotspur. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. It's been a bumper edition, but I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. If you have, please press that like button. If you don't already, please do press subscribe. Let's get as many people subscribed to this channel as possible. I really appreciate all your support. If you'd like to become a member, please do go into the description box. It's only £1 a month and really helps support me. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Come on, you Spurs.